This millionaire not only tells you how to get out of debt, but how to build financial abundance as well. This is the most replayed part of this.
You can't afford a home anymore. All these things seem impossible to break through. But people want to feel free, but they don't feel emotionally free because of all the baggage they have in their life. And that's what I want people to start to feel is how can you feel emotionally free so that your money can come to you effortlessly. And when it leaves you, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And the more we relax, the more we can receive. And so if I'm tight and I'm always anxious or I'm not willing to look at my bank account because I'm afraid of what's in there, how are we able to receive more and spend more freely? And I think
Even
for many
fighters.
years, I learned how to make
When you're
money,
loose.
but I didn't learn how to spend money. And so I just hoarded it because I was afraid to go back being broke on my sister's couch. I didn't want to go be broke again. So I just stashed it away into my bank account and just like, okay, I'm going to just wait for it to grow so I feel safe. But that was almost like a prison in a sense emotionally because I didn't feel free to spend it. I was still sleeping on friends' couches. I had $1 million in the bank and I was sleeping on friends' couches. I was sitting in the middle seat, the cheapest seat I could on buses or on planes. And I'd always be like, man, I'm so uncomfortable the next day. Like my back hurts. Like I'm not feeling free because I was afraid. I was anxious to lose money. And that is not emotional freedom. That is not healing. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, God, I'm starting to make money. It was like years into my business. I was like, I'm financially free, but I'm still trapped. What is holding me back? And I realized a lot of it was my money story and my money personality style that I needed to start working on.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the thing that you ever like, I've arrived and I'm perfect and now I'm like this Zen master at money. It's a constant back to awareness.
Yeah.
It's a constant practice of awareness and breaking through those limitations.
Yeah, I think what I'm thinking about when I'm hearing you is if me and you went back to a place in our life where we really didn't have money,
Yes.
and you think about someone who's in that position who's listening to us right now, and in their head they're thinking, but how do I become abundant when I don't have? Well, like my natural thing is like, I'm just struggling to pay my next bill. And me and you have both been in those situations. I
Yes.
remember when I was growing up, I grew up in a house where we had just enough. Like that was the language my parents used.
Yes.
We have just enough. And my parents would often argue about money. I remember I wasn't allowed to buy cool shoes and stuff. I'd have like the knockoff cheapest brand from whatever, which was, I actually didn't have an issue with that. I didn't have an issue with any of it because we had food and that was my normality. But it's really interesting because the amount of times growing up, I started working when I was 14. And I think that gave me a really interesting sense of how hard it was to make money. Because I started working at 14, I used to get paid £2 per street that I delivered newspapers on.
Wow.
So imagine there's 100 houses. It's going to take me like... I
Not
don't
per
know.
house.
No.
Per street.
Per street.
Oh my
So I
gosh.
did 5 streets. And so I'd get £10 at the end of the week if I did 5 streets. And each street would take me at least an hour,
Wow.
maybe.
He's not lying because I've done the exact same thing when I was young as well. That was literally one of my first jobs, delivering newspaper rounds, paper rounds they were called. And it's dirt cheap, but it's a good way to start building, especially when you're young and you're so business focused, you're willing to do things like that. Oh, it's going to help out. Hence to why this YouTube channel exists, right?
I don't know, something like that. And so I'd walk around, I'd pull this thing and I'd deliver it. And I got an understanding of how hard it was to make money. But then that became a story for me, going to your point.
Now they're about to talk about the part that you struggle with, which is generosity. A lot of people struggle with this. When you have a tiny bit, you feel like, what's the point of sharing? But we know if he who's able to be generous with tiny is going to get trusted with a lot more. You know, Heavy's the head that wears the crown, essentially. So he's going to talk about generosity and tips and secrets. Don't forget, he's a millionaire. You know, what works, essentially. So we're going to be diving into that right now.
There was a beautiful thing that we'd always repeat in the monastery. It was like, God doesn't see what you give, God sees what you hold back. And so there's not this,
man.
you know, because we can sometimes
Gosh.
become egotistical about how much we give. And it's like, well, you got one hand behind your back. And that's, you just made that point. It's that pinch. It's that, are you giving where there's a challenge to give?
Yeah.
Because that's where we're healing. You can get really egotistical. Like, hey, if you were
I went
worth
through
$1
that
billion
today.
and you signed $1 million check, like I know people that are making $3 million in interest a day. Like, so you writing $1 million check is not the same. This also applies when you have very little. So my parents who didn't make a lot, when they were giving,
It felt like a lot.
it felt like a lot. And so like what we're saying is that this thought of being a giver has to be core to us.
You know, my dad was a lot like that too.
Yeah.
He had strangers knocking on the door that somehow convinced him to stay with us for like 3 months in the summer. Who were, and he just opened his doors and said yes, like okay. And so he was just like your parents, like okay, you need a place to stay for a week, a month, 2 months, cool, we'll figure it out. We'll feed you, we'll do this, as long as we feel like you're doing something good and we're trying to support you. And I think you don't have to give money to feel rich.
Yes.
You can be very generous with your time, with your resources in other ways, with your food. It's like you can give in other ways and create a richness of life. And that's the key.
Okay, I get that, but I feel like that's kind of, he's kind of going outside of that. In this specific case, we're talking about money, essentially. And I feel like this is something that people with a lot of money struggle with. Hence to why I mentioned you struggle with it. People with a lot of money struggle with where, well, I can give my time, I can give this. Time is great, but time isn't going to feed someone who's hungry. We sit there and talk, and that's fine. That's absolutely great. But I need money because I'm homeless, and a roof over my head will be nice. Warm food. Do you see what I mean? Resources, aka money. So if you're struggling in that aspect, myself included, that's why I'm making this video. It's not just for you guys, but myself included for
is
you.
to feel rich and abundant and free. And if you feel that, when you start making money, you're going to continue to feel free. The biggest trap is when you feel scarce and you start making money and you still feel trapped. You still don't feel free. That is an even greater prison in my mind, that you're living in scarcity when you have money.
I mean, there's so many people right now that have the
Greedy,
pressure to
then.
save money, because we've been talking about making money.
Yes.
But there's this pressure to save money. And how do you find that balance between spending comfortably if you have the ability versus like saving for your future or your family? Like, how do you think about that version?
Good question.
Well, I think when you can live beneath your means and feel abundant, you've won. So when you live beneath your means and you don't need extra stuff, you've won. I just watched The Count of Monte Cristo the other night. It's an incredible movie of a guy who has nothing, who was born by, back in the, 1700s or something. It's a period piece. He was born of like a clerk, a guy who makes no money. And his friend was born of like some general who had a lot of money or something. And this poor kid that grew up friends didn't have anything, but he had the world. He had no money, no possessions, but he just approached life as like, man, but here's a piece of string. Here's a rock that I can play with. Like I can just imagine the beauty of the world, and he appreciated everything, even though he had no money.
Creativity.
And I think in some ways, it's so hard to look at that when we see Instagram and TikTok where everyone has things.
That's the hard part, yeah.
When you see everyone else having fun with money and going on that trip with their girlfriends, or buying that expensive car to show off to their guy friends, or getting the nice watches, or having the cool shoes, and you thinking, oh, if I could really have money, then I could have these things that would make me feel cool or feel better. But if we can approach life and just be like, man, life is so good with what I have, that is true wealth. That is true abundance and happiness. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't strive to create more if you want more. If you want to have nice shoes or a nice watch, cool. You've got to learn how to make money. And you want to learn how to make money easy, not make money hard. And that is a process in developing these skills, these talents within you, and seeing how you can monetize those skills. And I'm not saying don't splurge on certain things if you want to, but you have to understand the consequences. If you're going to splurge on something to have fun with friends or go on trips and spend this money that you maybe don't have, just know there might be a consequence to that later. If you have to use a credit card, you have to pay that debt with interest later. So just know there's a cost to splurging or spending when you don't have it. I'm a big fan of saving and investing so that you can have freedom in the future and feel rich continually, and not needing to buy things to feel richer.
Yeah. What about this idea of I want to make money quick. Like I just want to make $1 million in a week. I want to find that hack that solves my money problems. Like, what's your take on that? Is that possible?
I've got money wounds, and it's because I wanted to make easy money in my past, not
too.
make money easy. And I don't know anyone that doesn't want to make easy money.
Yep.
Like,
If you type on YouTube right now how to make money quick, fast, and all of this, you see a bunch of videos that'll pop up to you. So it's still watched, still very popular. So it's just human nature.
ego wants it to come to us now, and want to find the quick hack or the quick investment that's going to 10x in 2 months. Sure, there's always outliers that figure out a way to do that. But every time I've tried to do that, I've lost my money. And it's been painful. And I'm like, okay, I think I've learned that lesson, but here's this new, like, quick, easy money opportunity. And every time I do it again, I'm like, what was I thinking?
Lose money, yeah.
You see that others act like there's a way to do it so easy. If you just invest in crypto, if you just invest in this, if you just do this thing, you're going to make quick and easy money. I don't know anyone who's made hundreds of millions, millions, or billions who's lived that way. They might have invested and gone all in on one business and created generational wealth. Or maybe they went all in on investing in one main stock that ended up 10 or 20xing over time. But going the quick, make easy money way doesn't usually work. And it's painful lessons you have to live afterwards.
Yeah.
So I don't know, have you ever made quick, easy money?
No, I haven't for sure. And I probably made mistakes when I had a bad relationship with money.
Yeah.
I remember one of my mentors in like 2013 told me to invest in crypto.
Oh,
And at the time, I thought to myself,
it's a scam.
I've only got, like at that time in my life, I probably had $1,000, right? Saved. Because I'd just come out, I just started working. I didn't have the money. So I was thinking, $1,000, what's it gonna do? Obviously, I was stupid. I didn't know.
That also wouldn't have been quick.
It would have been quick. It would have taken 10, 15 years. Yeah, it would
That's
have
the
been,
thing. It's like,
yeah, it would have taken 12
we could
years.
always look back and say, oh, our friend told us to invest in this thing 10 years ago. And if I imagine if I did it 10 years, just like any stock.
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
you invest in it and
yeah.
wait 10 years, it should go up if the company continues to do well.
But no,
but that's,
I've never made easy money. And I
well, here's you
go
actually
on.
you actually have made easy money after putting in a decade plus of work, a decade of developing skills, of monetizing your skills, and following the 7 habits we talk about in this book, which is you can make easy money now. You can get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to speak for 60 minutes because you've added so much value in the world for the past decade plus. And even a decade before that of spiritual practice, before you even learned how to make money.
Yeah,
So
and
two
making no money.
decades of how do I develop skills within me to serve people, whether it be one-on-one, 1 to 10, 1 to 10,000. How do I develop those skills to serve and give generously? You have followed this mindset perfectly, which is a mindset of generosity and gratitude. And that's all you did for essentially the last 2 decades. How can I learn how to become a better human? How can I give generously? And how can I be appreciative and grateful for the life that I have? And you had no money for almost 4 years as a monk. But I would bet that you lived a beautifully rich life. You didn't need the money to feel rich. You felt provided for. You had nature, you had community, you were learning, you got to be on purpose, you got to serve. And what a beautiful gift to receive. And you had no money in your bank account, but you were probably one of the richest people that you knew. And that is beautiful.
I could actually agree with what Lewis was saying there. A lot of it was definitely making sense. But now we've got, I believe, Scott Galloway, which he's about to deliver a monstrous delivery on the pursuit of wealth versus riches. You need to hear
There is a
this.
certain pride of ownership. I think it's situational. Where you are in life, how much money you have, the city you're in. But buying a home is meant to be an enhancement to your life. It's not a suicide
Not a
pact.
curse,
And
yeah.
it may not be right for everybody.
Yeah, I think what it gave
I don't think it is
people
right for everyone.
as a symbol was something to pursue, right? We started talking about you go to college, you get a degree, you get a job, get married, you get a house, you have kids. Like it became one of those tentpole
That's
things.
right.
And so
American
now when
dream.
you take it out, it's almost like what should people be pursuing, right? If you got married, you got a good job, you're working, you're with your partner, It's
Now
almost like
what?
people think they have to pursue. It's almost like the assumption that you have to have kids. It's the same assumption of, oh, well, we have to buy a house.
Yeah.
So what should people pursue instead financially when it comes to financial security?
Good question.
The goal is what I'll call wealth. The goal isn't to be rich. Rich is the things you see. Wealth is what you don't see. And your pursuit should be wealth or economic security. And this is
AKA for me, your pursuit should be freedom.
what
Carry
wealth
on.
is. Wealth is having passive income that's greater than your burn. Two examples. I have a buddy who runs M&A for a bulge bracket investment bank, makes between $3 and $10 million a year, depending upon the market. Because it's all current income, he pays 50% taxes between his ex-wife, his home in the Hamptons, and his master of the universe lifestyle that he feels he deserves. He hasn't saved a lot of money, and he spends most of it. And I know that firsthand, he has a lot of sleepless nights wondering what happens if the music stops. He is not wealthy. My father, who is 94, between his pension from the Royal Navy, Social Security, and he owns 6 washer dryer machines and trailer parks where he goes and collects the money with his walker. He makes $52,000 a year. He spends 48. So he is saving money despite the fact that he's not working. So his passive income is greater than his burn. He is wealthy. So you want to put yourself on a track to being wealthy. You want to say, realistically, I can control how much I spend. I've been coaching this couple living in San Jose, and they're in their late 50s. I talk a lot about young people, and they say, Scott, we're in our late 50s. What do we do? How much money do you have? What's your house worth? Da-da-da. And by the time they're 65, they're not going to have enough passive income to pay for their lifestyle. I said, well, let's lean into our strengths here. Why are you in San Jose? And they said, well, we've always lived here. I'm like, well, okay, your kids are gone. And you just mentioned that you go to Costa Rica twice a year. Why wouldn't you try and cut your burn 40% and move to Costa Rica and take that economic pressure away and sell your house here? I think your kids would love to come visit you in Costa Rica. So the question is, put yourself on a path using basic math and what you really think you're going to need in terms of passive income, such that at some point, ideally it's by the time you're 40, it's usually not, but it needs to be by the time you're 65 or 70, because that release of economic anxiety frees you up to focus on what is really important, and that is deep and meaningful relationships. So the reason why I am so much happier over the last 10 years than I was kind of the first 45 years of my life is that economic stress was always there for me. I was raised by a single immigrant mother who lived and died a secretary. I felt like there was a ghost following us around telling us we weren't worthy because we didn't have money. Between college, student loans, the dot bomb crash, and the great financial recession, I just never had enough money to have passive income such that I was done. Most people, and a lot of people never get there. I got lucky. I sold my last company about 10 years ago for a lot of money. Now, unless I really screw up again, which I've done a couple times, I can focus on my relationships. The resting blood pressure of a child in a low-income home is higher than the resting systolic blood pressure of a kid in a middle or upper-income home. I think the majority of divorces.
Wow, that's deep. Goodness, to that level?
Are not a function of infidelity or a lack of shared values. It's those things, one or more of those things might happen. And then the incendiary on it is financial stress. 2/3 plus of divorce filings are from women. And we don't like to say this because we like to assume all men are predators and all women are virtuous. But when a man is under financial stress, the reality is he becomes less attractive as a mate. And that can lead to real stress in the relationship. Wow. So what you want to pursue, if you're not pursuing a home, you want to put yourself on a path. You want to get alignment with a partner. You want to track your spending and put yourself on a path to some level of economic security, of wealth by, say, the time you're 65. And if you're young and you're killing it, instead of buying a bigger flat screen or a bigger TV or maybe a bigger house, well, what if I started saving 10, 15, 20, 30% of my salary and I got wealth by the time I'm 40 or 45? Because to be in America, young and healthy and have passive income that's greater than your burn, you're just going to have a wonderful life. So it's not acquiring anything. It's getting to a point of economic security or wealth, and that's a function of two things. How much money you make such that you can save. Key to wealth is not how much you make, it's how much you save. And also the thing you can control is your burn. You know, I have a friend who ran a hedge fund. It closed down. He makes good money, but not great money. Living in Tribeca with 3 kids, needed $1 million a year to live that life. Moved to Portugal, lives an amazing life with a beautiful home, great food, childcare, great education on 400 grand a year. I mean, these are problems of privilege, but that has taken the world of stress off his shoulders. He now needs to make a very good living, not an outrageous living. So, but surround yourself with smart people who can help you make these decisions. But wealth is passive income that's greater than your burn.
When you bring
That was phenomenal delivery. The coherency of it just made sense. Compendious.
up the word money, most of us kind of go blank-faced. We want to reach for a stress ball. We kind of, you can just sense that it's uncomfortable to talk about it because we're almost reminded of all the bills stacking up and all of our expenses, and we spent too much on TikTok Shop this week, and you know the reality hits, and we kind of don't want to talk about it, don't bring it up. How do we get out of that stressful wiring? And you talked about it even there with your background. Like, I grew up in a family where we didn't have the healthiest relationship with money because we never had enough. Or we always had just enough, and that was good enough. And that was always like, you know, you're just looking at your bank balance sitting at 0 all the time. Like, how do we rewire our relationship with money? Because most of us have a stressful relationship with money.
Well, when you think about how they help people who are depressed, it's a combination of talk therapy and, if needed, some sort of, you know, pharmaceutical intervention. I think mental illness or mental unwellness around money, I think we absolutely need to, one, have more financial literacy. I think we should have a class called Adulting in your senior year of high school that says, my kid can do derivatives, but I just figured out he doesn't understand the interest rate on his credit card. So young people need a certain level of financial literacy. Also, I encourage them to talk about money with their friends. It's especially hard for men. Women are disproportionately evaluated based on their aesthetics. Men are disproportionately evaluated based on their economic vitality. So for a guy to say, hey, you know, I lost a shit ton of money in the market. Should I sell it? Do I get a tax write-off? That connotes weakness. They're worried that they're less attractive. There's actually something very British that you might relate to, and that is British people, the best grade I understand in Britain that everyone wants is you get really high marks, but really low effort scores. You're supposed to be accidentally rich. I'm such a baller, and I'm so great at what I do that I just accidentally slipped and fell on a ton of money.
Made money.
No, it's work. You got to think about it. You got to talk about it. So I encourage people to talk to their friends. And if you're comfortable, this is how much money I'm making. This is how much I'm saving. This is, you know, taxation is really important. Well, what if I moved to Florida? How much money would I save? You know, what if I buy a house now? I heard there's something called 1031 exchange where I can roll into my next property tax-free. Talk about money. Get really good at it. Roger Federer, do you think he never talks about tennis? Talks about it all the goddamn time.
The issue is finding a friend who won't backstab you or who won't go out and spread your private information to everyone else. That's the problem. Finding who you can trust to be able to talk about money. I mean, I'm sure you agree, right? Let me know in the comment section down below. Why should I please like the YouTube button for the YouTube algorithm? But finding someone you can trust, I think for me, that is the major issue.
People say, yeah, I want to be great at money. Is anybody great at anything? If I wanted to be an amazing evolutionary anthropologist, would I never talk about it? Would I never bring it up in conversation? Would I never want to talk to other people about evolutionary anthropology? If you want to be good at money, put down the facade and start talking to people about their investments, how much money they make, what they do with their money, how they save money, what they do to try and limit their spending. I talk about stoicism. See if you can find a practice where you get reward or a dopa hit from exercise or relationships. Gamify saving money. My junior year at UCLA, I was in a fraternity with mostly wealthy Jewish kids from the Valley, and there were 5 or 6 of us out of 120 guys, and everybody knew who we were. We didn't have any money. We were always late on our house bills. Everyone knew, oh, those are the poor kids, right? And one summer, we all lived in the same apartment building, and we gamified saving money. And we had a whiteboard. and we literally made a game out of it. In the summer of 1985, I survived for 12 weeks on $78 a week, including rent. Because if I didn't save $3,000 by the fall, I wasn't going back for my senior year in college because I didn't have wealthy parents. And if you can gamify saving money with a partner, especially a romantic partner that you can be totally transparent with, God, that's powerful. We're building something. We're going to save a ton of money. Can we save $5,000 or $7,000 this year together? And it's going to be $8,000 next year, and then it's going to be $9,000. And with compounding in 5 or 6 years, which will go really fast, we have 60, 80, 100 grand. And having kids is, I think, the most rewarding thing it has been for me. I didn't plan to have kids, but it was having kids with someone else and raising what feel like pretty good citizens. But a close second was building economic security with someone else. We had total alignment, right? We're going to save. We were transparent around our expenses. We were generous with each other. Oh, no, you should do that. There's a very unhealthy dynamic sometimes in relationships. And this is sexist, but I found it to be true, where the dude uses money to control his spouse, and the spouse turns it into a game of how much money she can spend without him knowing. And fortunately, that's getting flipped a little bit, or it's equalizing because women are doing so well. Women under the age of 30 are making more money in urban centers, more single women own homes. But there's still, in my generation, this very weird dynamic between the sexes and money. But going back to your original question, talk about it, understand it. If you want to be good at it, you got to get literate at it. And you want to bring it up with your friends, and you're going to start learning. I spend 4 hours a week probably talking to other people about my economic well-being, what tax loopholes there are, where I should be investing. I have a lot of real estate. When interest rates come down, at what point do interest rates get low enough where I should be pulling a second out and putting it in the market, knowing if I have a 10-year mortgage over 10 years, the market's usually up about 7 to 9% a year. Does that make sense, right? Think about it all the time. You're the average of your 5 friends. You've seen that study, body mass, politics, sports teams. But what's more interesting is one of those 5 people will be more economically secure, much more economically secure than the other 4, despite not making a lot more money. You want to know those behaviors and those characteristics, and you want to model that person.
No, he's completely right. Because I would say the more you talk about something, the better you become at it. If you hang around with people who talk about ice creams, you're going to know something about vanilla. No, you should mix this one with this one, because in my college room, all I hear is them talking about ice cream. You end up picking things up. So that's the exact same thing with money. You just want to make sure you surround yourself with people you can talk with money. Make sure you could trust them, though, because I wouldn't want you to get hurt. Now listen to Cody.
I meet a lot of young people who sadly have spent so much money on their degree, are really smart academically, but then that skill doesn't translate into knowing how to make their company more money, knowing how to lead people really well, knowing how to build functions, systems, processes. And therefore it's like, well, wait a minute, I just studied all these years, but it doesn't translate.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, for a long time, we employed people from the top universities and financial firms. We would go out and we would hand select them because that would be an indicator of their grit, perseverance, and potentially their intellect, their IQ. Now, by and large, you're starting to see a lot of the top institutions bypass that. You know, Google doesn't mandate that you have a college degree if you're going into an engineering degree, actually. And I think that should be really liberating for us. It's basically breaking down this barrier that's a 6-figure barrier that allowed for the few, the elites, to stair step over everybody else. And now it's actually saying, how bad you want it? And don't tell me what you learned. Show me what you can do. Or even better, show me what you did. And so I think the resume of the future is actually, if somebody came to you, Jay, and they were like, I just graduated from Wharton. I am very smart. You know, I also did my undergraduate degree at Harvard. I now want to come work for you. You'd be like, what do you know how to do? Do you know how to market? Do you know how to grow a beverage company? Do you know how to increase our investment return? Oh, you kind of like theoretically have looked about how to do that in a case study? That's probably less interesting to you than somebody that goes, you know what? I was part of the beverage team at Erewhon and Whole Foods, and I figured out sort of across the country how they buy different pieces of inventory.
Yeah, you got my attention already.
Right, exactly. And maybe because I want to help you grow this individual business, which I know you care about because I see it on your socials. I put together this little spreadsheet for you. Here's the things they care about. Could I come work for you for free for 3 or 6 months? And if that works out, could we do something better and bigger? The problem that people usually have on the internet when I throw out the word work for free is young people are like, remember that part where you told us that we were broke and we don't have any money? So I'm not
Good
trying
point.
to dismiss that at all, but I do think we have to be honest about the fact that when we're young, you're going to have to work harder than you think, longer than you think, doing stuff you don't like with people you probably don't like until eventually you get the right to do something really interesting. But like, you don't die in your first job from it being really hard and challenging. You die from the absolute monotony and the low level tasks you have to do for basically pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I fully agree. Let's say someone's 30 years old.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or 30 to 35. They worked 10, 15 years after graduating. They've been at the same company. Maybe they've moved once.
Yeah.
I was actually talking to someone like this yesterday. She's been at this one company for 6 years. It's a great company, great on her resume, but she's like, I don't really want to be here. I don't think this is where I see my future. But I'm so scared of quitting.
Jump shipping.
I don't know how to invest. I probably didn't save that much anyway. Now I
Yeah.
feel bad about it. I'm probably feeling a bit of shame and guilt that I didn't save that much over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
What would I do, Cody?
Well, one, I would say these days you do not have to have money to make money, which is incredibly powerful. So when I think about it, if I'm 30 and I am at a company like that, what would I do today? Well, I would actually probably sit down and figure out, what am I actually skilled at that somebody else would pay me for? Once you know what somebody else would pay you for, which is really just like, do people ask for your opinion on this? Could you actually get jobs in this space? If it was me, because I'm kind of unemployable, like, you don't want me to work for you. I got my own ideas. I want to do things this way. If she's like that, then what you want to do is you want to try to partner with somebody where you can be the solution to their problem. And because you understand what I call deal making, which is really the language of money, you can negotiate an ability for you to own part of a thing in order for you to have one of 3 outcomes. If she can figure out if she can help a business grow its revenue, make more money, if she can help a business cut its costs, or if she can help decrease the pain of a business owner, you can negotiate your way into a business and have equity in it and upside. And I wish somebody had taught me that earlier, because this is what consultants do. This is what private equity firms do. This is what some of the largest institutions in the world do. I call it expertise to equity. But if I was her, I'd say, don't go find another job. And if you don't have a brilliant idea that you're like, I would die for the want of creating this thing in the world, if you have that, please go do it. But if you're like, I don't have that, I just want to make money and I want to feel respected and I want to feel like my skills fit somewhere and I'm able to have an outsized income. If that's you, then I think you should try to value your skill set. Then you should try to negotiate for an upside deal with somebody. And you should try your hand at this game called ownership, which is where you say, hey, small business, I know how to market. Can I help you market at the side while I'm working on this company? And because I help you grow your revenue by 50%, could I keep 10% of the 50% I grow? Do you think a small business owner would say yes to that? Of course they would, because there's no downside. And I think more often than not, we think that the only risk you can take in making money in business is putting your own cash down. That's a risk. Or starting a business, aka dedicating your life to something. And the last part I'll get a little statistic on us is 90% of startups fail inside any rolling 10-year period. We know that statistic. Most startups make $0 for the first 3 years. After that, the average entrepreneur makes about $46,000 a year, which is great, but not when you've been making 0 for 3 years. And then on top of that, we've got this nation of people who have all these bills to pay, and they are betting on hopes and dreams as opposed to realities. And so my commentary is, can you figure out how to...
Before she even says that, betting on hopes and dreams, I mean, they've been given a society that shines the light to quick access to money, gaining things quick, microwave mentality. So no wonder people would rather bet, and they think that they're betting on themselves, but rather gamble their money away essentially on something that really and truly, when you sit down and analyze it, you know it's not going to work. It's a scheme, get rich quick scheme, pyramid scheme, whatever scheme it is, rather than something that is boring, slow. And I'm realizing it now that I'm in my 30s, I'm realizing it, that obtaining wealth is actually a very slow and boring process. But the boredom, the slowness is actually what will help you retain it once you eventually obtain it. You see? And now I'm in a business of attaining and retaining, because what's the point of basically having all this wealth and then losing it later on? It just wouldn't make any sense. And plus, I would argue that's a worse position to be in. Tasting something and then being denied it for the rest of your life, that's way worse than never having to taste it at all. Then you don't really know what you're losing out or missing out on, you see. But let's get to the next part anyway. We've got Jaspreet Singh, who's about to tell us basically the 2 ways that you're going to need in order to obtain or create wealth. Very, very important.
What are you doing with your income? You can either build the equity by starting a company yourself or by building a home, or you can buy the equity. Now, how do you do that? Well, you have to understand the wealth formula. The wealth formula that I've come up with is you take your income minus your expenses, and that equals your investments plus your savings. So if you take your income, the amount of money that you make, and now you subtract all the things that you buy, your rent, your mortgage, your car payment, your groceries, your gas, you take away all of your expenses. And if you have a margin, well, now you have extra cash. Now you can save all or some of this money, but if you don't save some of it, then that money can be put to work in your investments. These investments, like I've been hinting at, is what makes wealthy people wealthy, and it's what keep wealthy people wealthy. These investments can be in the stock market, because anytime you buy a share of any company, if you go out and buy a share of, say, Amazon, you become one of the owners of the Amazon corporation. You get to share in the profits. If the Amazon valuation goes up, your stock price goes up. The second way would be through real estate, not through your home, but through a real estate investment, buying a rental property that you're buying for the sole purpose of making money. This is something that can pay you every week or every year, every month. Then it can be through your own business, or if you don't want to build your own business, you can invest in startups. It's much more accessible now. You can own physical gold. You can invest in cryptocurrency if that's something that you believe in. So there's a lot of different ways to build this equity, but this is where now you need to be putting your money to work to actually buy and own and build this equity.
Yeah, those are, first of all, I just want to say I love how structured your thinking is, and it's so great to break things down. And so anyone who's been listening or watching so far, make sure you go back and ask yourself which of those habits you're struggling with. Are you someone who's in the 2 S's, choosing to either spend or save? Are you someone who's being slowed down by systemic thinking and like being controlled about where that goes? Like really take a moment to reflect in this episode while you're listening, which part you want to work on, because I know right now some of you may be tempted to just turn this off and go, I'm overwhelmed. I don't want to hear about this. I'm scared about my money already. I don't want to talk about it. But I'm hoping that this is creating space for you to really sit down, introspect, and reflect. Going into that, I think one of the biggest issues that people have when they hear this, and I know that I had a long time ago when I first heard this, was I don't have enough to do anything with. And so I remember when I started hearing about crypto specifically, like very early on, like I probably heard about it like maybe like
2013.
13 years ago, probably the first time. Yeah, I was very early heard about cryptocurrencies about 12, 13 years ago. And I had just come out of the monastery, so I didn't have any money. Like I didn't have anything to invest. And probably in about a year, I probably would have had like 1,000 to invest. In my head, I go, that's not anything. What's that going to do? Yeah. Right? And I think a lot of people have that mindset where they're like, I only have $500. I only have $1,000. Like, what can I do with that? I might as well spend it on whatever it is or I'm going to save it because I need it for a rainy day. What does someone do when they have that mindset, when they're like, I don't have enough? How do you approach that?
So when I was in high school, I really wanted a Ford Mustang, but my dad was like, no, we can't buy a Ford Mustang. I wasn't going to get that car. But this is, again, when stock prices had crashed. And the next best thing, if I couldn't buy a Ford Mustang, and I started reading the business books then, was how about I buy some of the Ford stock? Again, I didn't have a lot of money. My first investment in the Ford stock was $2 because that's how much the stock was trading for. Now it's much higher. But what I'm trying to get at is, you can start with a very little amount of money. I mean, nowadays with the new age of stock brokerages, if you have $10, you can start buying this type of equity. You can start building this type of equity. But the key now is the consistency and how often, like doing it all the time. Because when I say consistency, people say, oh, anytime I have $100. Well, okay, what you want to do by consistency is make it automatic. Anytime you get paid, take a portion of that money and automatically invest it. Now, the next question is probably, where do I put this money? Do I just throw it into Tesla or Amazon? Well, if you're not willing to do that level of research, where you don't want to try to find the best companies, you don't want to invest in real estate, you don't want to get into the more, let's say the more advanced type of stuff. You want to just put your money to work. Well, the simplest thing you can do is look at something called an ETF, which is an exchange traded fund, which gives you exposure not to one company, but many companies, maybe hundreds of companies. For example, there's something called the S&P 500, which is a group of the 500 biggest companies on the stock market. Essentially,
Okay, we're gonna first. That's just the basic stuff that most of us knows. Okay, S&P 500, 500 of the largest companies in America, and you invest your money into them. Your money get distributed throughout, so you basically don't lose your money. People use it to preserve their wealth. I thought he was gonna say something a bit more deeper than that in regards to that, but people do use it to preserve their wealth, and so forth and so forth. So hence, there's a dip right here. But let's get to
500 biggest companies in America. You can invest in the S&P 500 by investing in just one symbol. So you invest in this one thing and you're getting exposure to 500 different companies. Now you don't have to worry about what each of these 500 companies are doing. You're just investing essentially in America, the future of the American economy. If that's something you believe.
So yeah, he's just saying the basics. So basically, I've always said this. Look, when people say things like this, look at what they do, okay? Look at what they done to obtain the wealth. Don't just do what is coming out their mouth. And I'm saying this respectfully. I'm not saying this in a bad way or to come at Justpree or anyone, because I've seen Graham Stephan do this, him, Lewis Howes. A ton of people will give you what sounds good because they mean well, because most people are idiots with their money. Let's just be honest. Most people are idiots with their money. There's a reason as to why you watch a ton of how-to videos around money, because you haven't been managing your money well. So you have to acknowledge and accept that you've been an idiot with your money, basically. It's only when you accept, that's when you can begin to change. If you haven't changed, no, I'm okay with money, then where is it? Do you understand? So start a business. I mean, you're watching a video of somebody tell you right now, invest in the S&P 500, when they didn't start off like that. They started off either trying to invest in property, to try and flip it, or to get that renting money income coming in, or whatever it is. And then they went to stocks and shares. I'm on about like individual stocks. They done things that they're not telling you that made them money. Basically, they didn't acquire their wealth through what they're telling you. So you might want to look into that, because that might change your whole perspective of the way you think about influencers, so-called influencers. Do you understand? So all I'm saying is, when somebody's telling you something, make sure you analyze, because I've been burnt so many times before even being on YouTube, watching influencers tell you, no, do X, Y, and Z. It works. Little to find out later on, after I get burnt, that they didn't even do that themselves. That's not how they started. They started off by actually making, like, building a business, or a ton of them, they actually made the majority of their wealth came from YouTube. Not even what they're telling you, 500 S&P 500, and wait for 25 years, 50 years for it to turn into 32 grand. So I'm saying this from the bottom of my heart with absolute honesty. Build something for yourself. Trust in yourself and invest in yourself. And if you don't trust in yourself right now, develop the abilities, the habits that will help you to become consistent and build something that's worthwhile. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below in regards to everything I've said, everything that we've watched in this video. Where are you starting? What are you beginning? Where are you watching from? And what plans or business do you want to start? Comment in the comment section down below to hold yourself accountable. Enough of watching tons of videos and still not taking action. Take action, because you're here today, you're gone today. Smash the like button, my friend, and I will catch you guys on the next one. God bless.